Good morning. This is Solomon Jones on 900 AM, 96.1 FM WURD, and I want to welcome you to a special presentation, Beyond the Hustle: How to Build a Business That Lasts. Success in business isn't just about the hustle. It's about timing, tools, and the internal clarity to use all of them wisely. Join us now for a special conversation sponsored by TD Bank on building mental resilience, accessing capital, and knowing when to take your next big leap. I want to introduce our panelists. Sitting next to me is Steve Jamison. He is the owner of Blue Soul Shoes. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
having me.
next to him, Kimberly McGlonn is the author of Build It Boldly. Kimberly, welcome.
Hey,
All right. So Joshua Johnson is co-founder of Poppa's Custard and the winner of the 2024 Level Up Pitch Competition. Joshua, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. And Damien Ghee is TD Bank Regional Vice President, Philadelphia Region. Damien, good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have all of you here. And I'm wondering, first of all, brother, you sharp. You know what I mean? You got on your summer gear and you are representing well. So, tell us about your business. Tell us about Blue Soul Shoes. How'd you get started?
Well, Blue Soul Shoes was started in 2007, right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's something I've always wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I've always had a bug for fashion, and an opportunity presented itself to me because, quite frankly, I was working at another company. I was there 16 years. They closed down. So it was either do my own thing or go work for someone else. And so I had to leap at the opportunity, and that's what I did.
Now, Kimberly, you are a serial entrepreneur, and I see you nodding your head. That story, I hear that story a lot whenever I talk to business owners. I was working in corporate, I was there for 16, 17, 20 years, and I wanted to do something on my own. Your book, Build It Boldly. Tell us what it's about.
it's a guidebook for folks who are thinking about how they're going to align their businesses with their communities that they care about, the issues, social issues, environmental issues that they care about. 70% of it is just this is what you can think about, consider when it comes to PR, your hiring practices, your retention strategies, and how do you engage your consumers in ways that inspire them to keep up with your journey and to actually come out and patronize you.
Mhm. And Joshua, I know you have your custard with you. Mad respect for that, first of all, that you brought your custard with you. I appreciate it. I do want some. But I want you to tell me how and why you started your business.
Well, we started the business quite simply to share something that was really special to our family with as many people as we could. Like many other folks, we lost family in the pandemic. And then we just pooled the resources and capabilities within our family. So I have a business background. My sister is an award-winning chef. She's a two-time Food Network champion. And my wife is a career educator and community advocate. So between our three kind of separate skill sets, we decided to take my sister's pastry cream just to markets, just to share with folks. And the business kind of naturally grew based on, people's enjoying it and asking for more.
Okay. And of course, Damien, so you work with businesses all the time, and hearing these stories is always a variety of stories, but there's always some common denominators to it. I wonder when you look at business owners and they come in and they talk about, needing finances because that's the number one need. What are the things that you look at TD Bank in terms of evaluating that and figuring out how you're going to support them?
Yeah, great. So the biggest thing is one, us making sure we understand their business, right? Like that's the first critical step because then we can kind of back into your numbers, right? Like everyone can give a tax return, a financial statement, et cetera. But really understanding how your business operates because it goes beyond lending. It goes about going into what are other services. You think about Venmo, Cash App, all these other payment rails that a bank can provide from a business standpoint. These are all encompassing. So, for us, we always want to have those conversations very early before we even want to think about financing. What is your vision? What does that look like? How can we help you on this journey? And we have to be there together, right? So the more we can have those conversations early on, we can provide guidance around, hey, debt service coverage. What does that mean? How much cash flow? So for an example, every dollar of debt, you should have $1.20 of cash flow to cover it, right? So what does that mean? So the more that we can understand your business to translate that back to you when you look at your financials, that really helps us assess what you can do. And then you think about collateral, capital in the business. And then, a lot of people don't think about it. your business and your personal are holistic together, right? Like depending on the size of your business. So what does your personal finances look like, right? Like we can look at the business, but if you're personally over leveraged, we got to have that conversation. So how do we look at that holistically, continue that dialogue, and then also help you with other aspects that are just not just lending, but also how do we help you transform your business and support that from a financial perspective?
You talked about personal as compared to business. And so I want to ask you this question when it comes to budgeting, separating your personal and your business finances and then building credit as a business. How do you advise businesses to do that?
Yeah, so we advise them in a couple different ways. One, we partner with a lot of community organizations when you think about financial literacy, technical assistance programs, CDFIs. So, one, trying to make sure we go back to understanding their business, what their needs are. And some of those needs may be much greater than we can handle day to day. So, we try to partner with organizations that can help them get there. Right? Like, we'll provide feedback, and there's opportunities for us to circle back with them over the next 6 months, a year, and say, hey, we saw your performances here. You budgeted X. Let's see how how that happened. What's going on with the business? Did you meet that budget? Did you not meet that budget? How can you work together? And what's going on with your business, right? Like a lot of real things are happening today that were unexpected. So you may have budgeted the end of or beginning of January, hey, this year was going to be phenomenal. And, right now my business is turned upside down. So how do we have those conversations, share our knowledge from other customers that may be in a similar industry to talk about, well, here's how they're navigating, or here's what we see. What are you seeing? And we can provide that and work on that journey together.
Yeah. Steve, what's unique about your business and what you do in essentially fashion?
For sure. The product itself. I source product from different countries, different manufacturers, different designers. We also do a lot of customization for the store. So a lot of product is unique to the store where nowhere else in the country, sometimes even the world, can you find the product that we carry. And of course, you always have the other components like the service that we offer. I can say it's particularly unique, but it's also something that we definitely strive to, show ourselves above and beyond other competitors.
Mm. So, Kimberly, as you wrote "Build It Boldly," what personal experiences did you take out of your experience as an entrepreneur in order to share those stories with others?
I think that it's the frameworks for the experience of what it means to lead a small business, to build a corporation, to pursue scale. That means, the metaphor I think about and I use in the book is that of surfing. This idea that we all are trying to figure out how to push ourselves into this great unknown, off the shore into the great unknown, and how we're chasing the wave, whether it's a loan or a large purchase order, and what it means for that to arrive, and you're surfing it, and what it means to come off of it. Then you need to think about, rest and recovery until you, find your way back onto your board and pursue the next wave, the unknown of that entire journey, the exhaustion of that journey. So I think that a lot of it was just reflecting on what it meant to lead for 10 years, to, manage payroll and overhead and design studios and procurement and all the things I think that we often are burdened by as business owners, but not coached through.
Yeah. When you talked about the surfboard, the first thing I thought about was sharks. So what if there's sharks in the water?
Well, there's
Then what?
those are your competitors.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you are, of course, Joshua, operating with several other people in your business. You're a family, but you're different people. And so how do you get on the same page to have the same vision for what it is that you want to do when different people have different skill sets and might have different ideas?
Well, I think it's simple. It's not easy. It's radically transparent communication, right? We didn't start the business without all being aligned on where we were going and what we were doing. We didn't transition from it being a kind of side interest to it being, a real commercial opportunity for our family without like explicit conversations, what that means. We have explicit roles in the business. I may be the co-founder and CEO, but quite literally, it is a women-owned business. My wife and my sister own more of the business than I do, so they are my boss. And if I come to them and say, hey, I would like to do X, and the two of them strongly feel that we should not do X, then we're not doing X. And that's just the structure of the business. And kind of separating, the good and healthy dynamics of proper kind of oversight and administration of the business from like our individual personal relationships, right? Like this is what we agreed to and how we would agree to operate the business. And that, whether we agree or not on a business thing, the family comes before the business, and so those relationships are kind of are prioritized that way.
Yeah. So in listening to their stories, Damien, I wonder, how can entrepreneurs assess their readiness for growth or expansion? How do they know when they're ready?
Yeah, it's a great question, and some of it comes down to some of the conversations they have amongst themselves, and we ask those challenging conversations, right? Like, one, let's look at historically, what do your financials look like? You may feel like you're ready for growth. Has your historical financials showed you've had the growth, right? And realize that growth. And even when you realize that growth, have you made money, right? Like you can grow and potentially lose money based on how you service your margins, right? Like if you want to just drive volume, you can, doesn't necessarily mean make money. So we have to have those challenging conversations and candid around, here's what we see, here's where are you looking to go? And if you forecast this out and we can work with you and your accountant, but what does that look like for you as you look at the next stage? And do you really want to go there, right? Like that comes with different challenges. If you're going from 500,000 to 1 million, is a different conversation from 1 million to 10 million to 50 million to 100 million. So based on where you want to go and what that looks like, that's where we have to have those conversations, looking at what your past, what your present, and in future, where do you look like you can realistically go, and what does that support look like, right? Because you can be really good. We find with some business, you're really good at building your widgets. You're really good at your services. Now you think about going to this next level. Do you need a dedicated CFO
Yeah.
that requires much more details and day-to-day operational needs that business owner has? And do you want that type of stress? So all those conversations we always have, and that's why I go back to making sure we have those conversations early. And I always find with business owners, sometimes they come to us when they have the need, not this is what our vision is, this is where we're thinking of going, and looking at us at that partner to take on that journey with them. Because the sooner you have it, the more you understand, okay, this is what cash flow I need to be. This is the type of collateral. This is the capital. This is X. The more you know that early, then you can adjust your plans to be able to be prepared for that growth.
Yeah. So self-doubt. I mean, we all deal with it, and I would imagine as business owners, you've dealt with it too. Steve, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those moments when you're like, should I really be doing this?
I always rely on my foundation, which is my spiritual foundation. It's what I was taught when I was a kid. I wasn't always, let's say, I'm a Christian, but I wasn't always a Christian. I became an atheist at some point. But then my Christianity, I grew in my spirituality, but I've always relied on my spirituality. Always those foundational scriptures that kind of keep me grounded and keep me focused on different components or challenges that I'm faced with. So,
Sure. In your book, is that something that you address, Kimberly?
Yeah, I think talk a lot about self-preservation and the
Yeah.
tactics for self-preservation, which are so important to just maintaining clarity of thought. The importance of developing practices in stillness and in solitude and in silence so that you can hear the voices that, for me as well, are spiritually anchored, but also the voices of my board of advisors. I encourage every entrepreneur to develop your own personal board of advisors. For me, they're oftentimes, many of them they're pioneers. I've always positioned myself as a pioneer. I enjoy pioneering. And so I seek the counsel of people who have done pioneering projects. And so I think that balance of what you're doing in the cultivation of your internal conversation and being really intentional about who you're allowing to have access to you, to give you input, to give you feedback, that building out that team can be really essential to just being able to stay sturdy in a storm.
What about burnout? I know that when you're doing a lot of stuff and when you have a business, you're doing a lot of stuff, right? When you're doing a lot of stuff, burnout is a real thing. Joshua, how do you deal with it?
So I think one, because these are kind of tied with the previous questions, you completely agree with the previous statements. I think it comes down to being intentional, right? As the CEO or even a small business owner that has more staff under you, you only have but so much, call it equity in terms of attention or energy to devote to any suite of things, right?
Yeah.
There are maybe 2 or 3 things that you as like the CEO, the owner, whatever you have to focus on. And everything else you need to either have, teams that are there for you, you need to have partners that are there for you, or you need to just be kind and understanding of yourself and say like, this is not something that we're going to be able to land in that way at this time. Because if you just drive and drive and drive, you will destroy yourself. The second thing that I would say about being intentional is being intentional about your time,
Yeah.
right? My days and weeks don't look like most people's who have office jobs, particularly because a lot of our direct selling days are on the weekends. I am also a Christian. I serve at my church. So my Sundays are also, at least in terms of our commitment, like a work day.
Yeah.
But there is a day during the week where that whole day, or at least half of it, all I am doing is resting, right? And maybe I have, some emails on my phone, but my laptop doesn't go open. Maybe I'll sit in front of a piano or do whatever else that gives me energy. But there is like dedicated time, no matter what is going on, to rest and to recuperate.
Damien, when you're advising businesses, do you advise them to build in that time away from the business, like time for themselves? Because I would imagine that it would be harder to succeed if you're never resting.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it depends on the relationship you have, with your customer, right?
Sure.
If it's only been, I'm just throwing out a range, but if it's been a couple months, you're mostly talking financials. A lot of our customers we have very close relationships with, and you can have those conversations where you can have an understanding of, how are you, taking a break? How are you reflecting on your business? So we find ways to kind of plant seeds where you're asking them to reflect on the past year with not only their financials, but what's going on, right? And the more you can do that, some of them are open to sharing. And if they are, not necessarily advise them on what to do, but more allowing them to self-discover as well. It's to them realizing like, yeah, actually, I didn't take a vacation. You're right. And it's not even us pushing them. It's just asking those pointed questions of curiosity and concern and making sure we can support them in different ways. My wife's an entrepreneur, so I can understand from that perspective where you do have challenges, how can you be a supportive partner?
Sure.
So taking those things that you experience and having those conversations with your customers can be critical to make sure that they're still along for the ride.
Yeah. Steve, you talked about sourcing your material from all around the world. Now, we are in a time of a lot of economic uncertainty, especially when you deal with international business. How are you navigating that to ensure that you continue to grow?
Well, making sure I stay in close contact with the vendors that are already in place, but still always exploring other opportunities. So I travel twice a year to Europe, particularly, but also locally, regionally, a couple different trade shows and showrooms in the States. And so it's always having just good conversations and open communication with the vendors and trying to find ways to, let's say right now there's the tariff issue. So trying to find ways to maybe bring product in at a lesser price or, a lower cost so we can not, pass those sorts of increases onto our customers so greatly. And so it's really just a matter of using your brain, quite frankly, just, navigating it through.
And being able to pivot, Kimberly, how important is that? Being able to kind of pivot when conditions change.
Yeah, I think that it's a form of mental agility. It's being able to recognize with honesty what's happening in the landscape and then being able to forecast what's going to be the best way to position yourself in response to what you believe is coming next.
Sure.
And I think that capacity to pivot is what allows you to have longevity. You have to be able to respond to conditions really all the time. You have to respond to the conditions of your employers, or your employees, excuse me, or the partners that you're working with and your clients, and of the market writ large. And so the agility inwardly to recognize that pivoting is something that you have to develop as a skill. It gives you the endurance that you need to be able to just withstand change.
Okay. Well, you're listening to Beyond the Hustle, How to Build a Business That Lasts. It's brought to you by TD Bank. And on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the real issue, money. We're going to join our panelists here, Steve Jamison of Blue Soul Shoes, Kimberly McGlonn, author of Build It Boldly, Joshua Johnson, co-founder of Poppa's Custard, and winners of the 2024 Level Up Pitch Competition, and of course, Damien Ghee, TD Bank Regional Vice President, Philadelphia Region. I'm Solomon Jones. This is WURD Radio. We'll be right back. Good morning. This is Solomon Jones on 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD. And I want to welcome you back to Wake Up with Word. We're having a special discussion this morning, Beyond the Hustle, how to build a business that lasts. We know, of course, success in business isn't just about hustle, it's about timing, tools, and the internal clarity to use them all wisely. We're talking with our panelists, Steve Jamison, owner of Blue Soul Shoes, Kimberly McGlonn, author of Build It Boldly, Joshua Johnson, co-founder of Poppa's Custard and winners of the 2024 Level Up Pitch Competition, and Damien Ghee from TD Bank. He's Regional Vice President, Philadelphia Region. I want to start with you, Damien, because we are now going to talk about the real thing that makes business go, the real thing that keeps us in it, even when it stresses us out, money. We have to talk about that. And so give me a story about you working with a business owner, a story that sticks with you as you think about your career and working with business owners.
Yeah. So when I think about, a business that we worked with, this has gone over uh, with our team members over the last probably like 10, 15 years. They were a small business customer. It started out, maybe, under $1 million of revenue. They're in a very specialized space. And, we were able to work with them to get their first, $500,000 loan. And through that journey and talking to them about where their growth plans, back to what we talked about, we saw the growth. We had those challenging conversations, right? Like, hey, I know you want to grow at, a 30% rate, but based on what you're doing today and to preserve the net income. So if something goes wrong, you may have to do it at 15%, right? Like, here's the numbers. So we have to really sit down and go through that because, you find that entrepreneurs are very passionate. Some have a business background and understand the numbers, but not everyone actually fully appreciates what that means from a bank standpoint when you're borrowing money, right? Like, a bank is really your partner. And as much as, hey, you lend me the money, X, Y, and Z, but we're still a partner, right? Because we don't want that business to fail. We don't know how to operate that business. So for us working through that with them, over that 10 years, they grew from a $500,000 revenue company and talking about having international needs and foreign exchange, talking about equipment finance, talking about every aspect of their business where we could add value. This helped them, and part of that guidance and their growth and passion, they grew to well over $100 million revenue company over that 10 to 15 years, right? And we were proud to play a role in that because we helped advise them to look at it the right way. Think about not only what does this look like today, but also looks like tomorrow. And then how do we bring in wealth partners to talk about, okay, what are you going to do with this business of this size, right? Like, are you going to have some wealth needs as well? And through that journey, you had challenging conversations of we need better reporting. So you can't use a tax return anymore. You may have to go to, what accountants would talk about, audited and reviewed financial statements. Now you have to have more higher frequency of that. So quarterly financials. And then, hey, as we're looking at the management team and your support services, do you need a CFO, right? Like, you've already gone to 10, 15 million in revenue. You can't do everything by yourself. As much as every entrepreneur may believe it, you need partners and need to delegate where you need experts. So having a traditional CFO help them as well, because they help translate what we're talking about, right? So that really helped us throughout that journey, understand what the customer's needs, where they wanted to really grow, and how do we help them manage that growth to make sure it's sustainable? Because you can grow as fast as you want, but you may you may lose money and outgrow yourself, and that potentially creates pitfalls. So we want to make sure across that journey, we're working with you to understand not only as you navigate the industry, political climate, economy, et cetera. Hey, how can we help you do that and provide insight and value add?
Yeah, I think all of that is important. Joshua, I wanted to ask you about expansion as you and your family consider how to expand your business. What are you looking at as a goal, maybe 5 years down the line for where you want your business to be?
Well, 5 years down the line, I would love for our business to have like deep and enduring kind of market penetration in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, maybe Mid-South, broadly speaking, the Eastern Seaboard, right? Either in retail but right now we're focused really heavily on like commercial food service, right? And when I think about how that expansion happens, you have to think deliberately. Like, what is the most adjacent locus of control that I can reach, right? And you want to start as close to home as possible. So for us, that means, we just are now carried by the Chef's Warehouse as a national scale premium specialty food distributor for food service. But we're not in 15 distribution centers. We are in the Philadelphia MSA distribution center. When we're going to a trade show in 2 or 3 weeks, one of the largest trade shows in the country for specialty foods, both retail and food service. And the major thing that we're talking about are partners in the Northeast. So New York, Boston, in Mid-Atlantic, Philly, DC, Baltimore, et cetera, Wilmington, Camden. And that's it, right? If there are other bigger opportunities, further afield, great, right? But we're not necessarily targeting and chasing them, so that when you're growing and you're scaling, you're doing so in a deliberate way that doesn't, have knock-on effects like 6 months from now. If we have like an account in Boston and another one in Texas and another one in California and another one in Florida, and you don't have like, the scale of having all of your customers in, a close proximity. So you got to pay more stuff to get stuff where it needs to go.
Yeah.
You split your attention in many different ways. So again, it's about being deliberate about starting where you are and then spreading in a meaningful and in a structured way.
Kimberly, author of Build It Boldly. As I'm listening to Damien and Joshua, I heard them both say partners, right? Damien identified the bank as a partner because you don't want the business to fail. You want your money back with your interest, right? We heard Joshua talk about partners and using those partners to expand. How do you advise businesses in terms of partnerships and seeking out partnerships and where to get them and how to get them?
And that's a great question. And I think the word that comes to top of mind is being strategic, right? And also thinking about, your partners ultimately, they need to be that you're entering into marriages, right? You're getting to know people. They're gonna court you. You'll court them. You go on dates. You learn what are your histories. But really, what you need to be listening to is what their values are. The idea ultimately is that in order for these relationships to go the distance, there needs to be integrity and an alignment of both values and vision. So really airing out as you're developing partners and identifying potential partners, what are the things that they have that are useful to you? Are they stand in gaps that you've already identified? And then how do you really communicate what you want to prioritize in ways that they can receive and act on, in ways that you can actually manage? You don't want to your point, Damien, you don't want to, you don't want to go too far ahead. You don't want to over promise and under deliver. So really practice some self-awareness and recognizing where you are and what you need now, and then think strategically about what you'll need next so that you don't outpace yourself and land in that place of burnout.
Hmm. How important is resilience as an entrepreneur, Steve? What are your thoughts?
Extremely important because constantly you are finding yourself facing challenges. A lot of people use the term hard when it comes to running or managing a business. I never like to use terms like that. Even the language that I speak to myself, I use words like challenge because that's what it is. It's an obstacle that you have to figure out how to get over or get around or get through. And so it's extremely important. If you don't learn how to bounce back, you will fail. Period. And I heard another business owner say this one day, like owning a business like putting out fires every single day. So every day you're having some kind of thing, some kind of issue that you have to face, that you have to figure out how to navigate. And it's something that's learned. It's not something that you read a book about. You can read a book about to sort of.
Which books should they read?
Kimberly,
Well, I read
just so they know.
I know
What books should they read?
her book.
Build It Boldly.
Sure.
I got you. I got him too. I got you too.
But the other book is the Bible, which is what I read. In addition to,
They go
I want to pick your book up.
Yeah, they go together.
But you learn principles like that help you so that when you're faced with those challenges,
Sure.
you just know exactly what to do and you put those things into practice. And the more you do it, the more resilient and stronger you become. Absolutely.
So we talked about partnerships, and I want to get back to banking because every bank isn't the same. Damon, what makes TD Bank different? What makes it a bank that business owners
Yeah.
should go to when they're looking for financing?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a community-based bank that's really a top 10 bank that is community focused, right? Like we're involved in grain in the community. When I think about the team that I lead here, it reflects the community around Philadelphia, what that looks like, and being able to have conversations. When I think about that, one of the aspects that I'm proud of is we have a community business development officer named Tommy Berner and Shelly Silva, who leads a much larger mandate across PA, New Jersey. But their focus is just to connect with diverse business owners, really to help build those relationships, help them come and connect to the right partner at the organization. Like he prides himself, Tommy, on being like a concierge of banking, right? Like, let's make sure you're with the right person and get to address the needs that you're looking to do, and making sure we're providing those transparent services, right? Making sure we're talking holistically, right? Like, because we've talked. You may hear someone talk about going across seas and doing purchases. Well, what does that look like? How can we help you from a foreign exchange? So how do we go beyond? And this is back to that piece, right? How do we go beyond the numbers? How do we understand your business? The more we understand your business, the more we can provide help, right? Like, we're not here to sell products and services. Was here to understand what your challenges are, and then how do we find the right product and service that really helps you address that challenge. And that's really where the partnership comes, because we can have candid conversations on what that looks like, right? When you think about not just cash flow, but what kind of collateral that you need, all those pieces. So to us, we're very passionate. We're on a number of boards around this city of Philadelphia, because we want to make sure not only do we work here, but we also serve the community, and being ingrained in every aspect of it, so we understand and be a better partner.
Access to capital. It's a story that I hear a lot, especially when it comes to business owners of color. That access to capital is one of their big challenges. Joshua, have you found that to be the case?
Well, I think so, but I think it's in a broader context, right? Like, capital for capital's sake does nothing, right? Like, capital is an accelerant, right? Like, if you strap a rocket to, a lawn chair, then it's going to go flying and then crash, right? Like, if you want to strap a rocket to something that's going somewhere, right? That's when you get the benefit of it. So I think that, for us, accessing capital has primarily come from, grants that we've received. We've had some smaller loans from community focused lenders, and really structured the business in a way that it pays for itself. Like, that is the way. And the biggest capital needs that we've had have had to be like the bigger strategic bets on, like, we're going to go and do this thing, or reach out to this kind of client, or put ourselves on this stage to try to grow and scale, and less about, I need X dollars to like make payroll this month, right? Like, you want, external funding to be focused, at least our approach, external funding coming in to be focused on a goal, an asset, a thing that's going to take you to another level. And not, and as little as possible, the things that you need to keep the lights on.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of capital and making money and growing as a business, when did you know, Steve, that it was time to invest, that it was time to take a risk, that it was time to do something in order to take that next step as a business owner?
Sure. For me, it was simple. It was when I reached the point of slowing growth. I figured, well, it's time to make some more money, and some of it is more personal, like things I've always wanted to do in the business, like expanding into clothing, for example.
Sure.
Because I'd start off as strictly a shoe store, but I always had a passion for clothing as well, because it's all fashion encompassing. And so it's just, again, just a numbers idea, but also a matter of reading the environment, the retail environment, or my particular environment, which is retail, but just understanding that there's a less of a availability in the market for me, and so there's a void that I can definitely feel. So
Are you looking to have your business be franchised around the country, or would you rather just have it, as Blue Soul Shoes, and have that one location and make it exclusive?
no, definitely expand. In fact, I just opened a line of credit through TD Bank the end of last year for the purpose of expanding. And just as I believe Damien said earlier, like having the money or the funds available before you need them, because I knew exactly what I was planning to do, but I also understood that I learned that I didn't want to wait until I needed it before going to the bank. So I got the line of credit before I actually need the funds. So, but that's the plan to do it.
So you did the
expand other
grandma
locations.
model because your grandmother tell you it's better to have it and don't need it
Exactly.
than need it and not have
Exactly.
it. Okay, so Kimberly, we've all talked about you've all talked about faith as part of what you do. I know that it's one of the themes in your book. How important are values, the moral compass, for a business owner?
I think it's a question that we have not been encouraged to even grapple with as we think about entrepreneurship or business leadership. But I think ultimately we all come from communities, from experiences where there's a particular pain point that we carry with us. And I think we've denied ourselves the opportunity to align our businesses and our business practices with those pain points. So I really like to encourage everyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship to really examine their own stories, the places where they come from, the pain that they've experienced. The wound is where the light comes in. And I think if we can align our businesses to our personal wounds, we can really do a different job, different job, a more urgent job of addressing so many of the things that really are challenges for the common good. So I definitely think that's a major part of what we have an opportunity to do through business.
All right. So, Damien G, before we go, I want you to talk about some of the tools that TD Bank has, like free advising, those online tools, those other things that you offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to doing financial education sessions for small businesses and individuals, the other piece is free is sitting down with one of our business banks or relationship managers, right? Like it doesn't cost anything to sit down and talk about your business. That's what we're here for. So taking on those one-on-one opportunities, because back to, what Josh mentioned, a couple of the other, and Steve and the rest of the group, everyone has a different need. They're in a different part of their journey. To sit down with someone at no cost and say, hey, here's my financials. Here's what my vision is. What can I do and how can we work together? That's something you can do today, right? Like you can set up that appointment, have that conversation. So we can talk holistically about, free services, and we can talk about the product offerings, and thinking about what that looks like. The most important thing is having that conversation with your relationship manager because everyone has that different need and different journey. So that's the biggest thing I would stress because it's such a value that people don't appreciate because we see so many businesses. We talk about so many so many customers, and we can share that knowledge with you, what we're seeing as well, right? So there's a lot of value in just those conversations. And then let's go into products and services because that's the vehicle, but all that information, knowledge that you're gathering from those business bankers, those relationship managers on our teams, that is where some of the secrets is because we can tell you, we've talked to other business owners that talked about having their own personal board and other aspects. So we're hearing it from other people. We're sharing that knowledge. So just can't stress that enough around taking those complementary opportunities just to sit down and have those conversations. And it could be 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 conversations that you could have over a period of time. It's no cost, right? Like it's just about building that relationship and providing services at the opportune time.
All right. Damien G, TD Bank Regional Vice President, Philadelphia Region. How do people get in touch with you and TD Bank?
Yeah. So you can get in touch with us at tdbank.com. You can email me personally, damien.g@td.com. We're always here to help, and we're on LinkedIn everywhere else. So,
All right.
thank-
Joshua Johnson, co-founder of Poppa's Custard. How we get some of that custard, man? How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can get our stuff off the shelf at a bunch of Philly area retailers. So DeBruno Brothers, South Philly Food Co-op, Riverwoods Produce. There's a couple of other ones. Oh man, I'm just missing.
What's your website?
www.pappascustard.com. You can go on there, check everywhere that we're stocked. You can also reach out to us on Instagram, Poppa's Custard Co. POPPASCUSTRDCO. Or hit us up online, info@pappascustard.com.
All right. And Kimberly McGlonn, how do we get a copy of your book, author of Build It Boldly? How do we get a copy?
You guys are going to go to Amazon, you're going to go to Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, and you're going to pick up a copy of Build It Boldly. You're going to gift it to someone who's graduating and ready to start something new. You can find us on Instagram at build.it.boldly, or you can follow me personally, Kimberly McGlonn, on Instagram.
All right. And of course, Steve Johnson, owner of Blue Soul Shoes. How do we get in touch with you?
Of course, we are located at 1805 Chestnut Street, right in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia. You can also follow us on Blue Soul Shoes Philly on Instagram and also Blue Soul Shoes on Facebook. And we have a website as well, bluesoulshoes.com.
All right. I want to thank all of our panelists, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning for this special presentation, Beyond the Hustle, How to Build a Business That Lasts. Success in business isn't just about hustle. It's about timing, tools, and the internal clarity to use them all wisely. It's brought to you by TD Bank. I'm Solomon Jones. This is WURD Radio.